all, he comes, family and devotees come and you will see what he's going to sing. It's going to be very blissful. We all pay a couple of $100 for getting any psychology consultation. We don't need any consultation. just after this, you will see completely de-stressed and get connected. So this is connected to an Atta Forum. So the founder of Atta Forum is here, Rajiv here. So he is a very leading private equity person, but again, fully devoted to Krishna. And the way in which they do it, whatever the business they do, 50% is for Krishna. That's how they do. They really look after so many cows. So that forum, under that forum, Bhakti Club, is what this is conducted here. Please enjoy, and then end we'll come back and talk.
Thank you so much, Venkatu. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Jai Shri Ram. Hare Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. I was just very enthused to see Venkat Prabhu dancing enthusiastically behind. He had already started the warming up. And I hope by the end of the program, all of us will be doing that actually. These deities are so beautiful. They are so famously known as Vitthala, Panduranga, and Rukmini Mata. In Maharashtra, they are very famous. How many of us have actually taken darshan of them? They're beautiful deities, right? In Marathi, I think it means brick, right? Vitthala, sthala, means resting place, where the Lord is sitting. They would come early in the morning, and in the night, when everyone had gone to sleep, Pundalik stayed up, and he saw the three of them coming out of the sage's house. But to his surprise, they looked very, very effulgent, very beautiful. So this went on every day. One day Pundalik stopped them as they were coming out and said, "Mothers, who are you? And why is it that you come into the house looking extremely disheveled and you leave the house looking extremely opulent? Who are you? And what's happening in the house?" And so the three mothers, they said, they turned to Pundalik and they smiled at him. And they said, "Pundalik, we are actually the three rivers. We are actually the great river Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati. And every day, thousands of people come into our rivers. And they put so much of their sins into our rivers. And our duty is to take away their sins. But who takes away our sins? We have to hold all these sins. Who will purify us? We have taken the dirt. Who will clean our dirt?" And so we prayed very hard to Krishna. And Krishna told us in a dream to come to this sage Kukuta. And Pundalik was very surprised. Why of all people him? And they said, this sage, unknown to you, has two very elderly parents in the hermitage. They are not doing well at all. They cannot leave and they are very sick. But day in, day out, while he is meditating on the Lord, he is taking so good care of them. And so Krishna told us that if you want to be purified, don't even come to my lotus feet. Come to the lotus feet of devotees like Kukutta. Because they are so powerful. Not only are they spiritual by nature, but they translate that into action. And then the three mothers said, it would do well for you to understand that you should take shelter of this sage. Because we have come to understand that you have been a bad son to your parents. You have never taken good care of them. You have taken them for granted. You have harassed them. You only have turned to them when you wanted something. But you have never asked them what they want. And at that point of time, Pundalik's life changed. Because of the sadhu sangha of that sage, the sadhu sangha of the rivers Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati, and because of their speaking about it, and because of the stock of his devotional service which was there, all of this combined to help elevate the consciousness of Pundalik. And he realized what a terrible sin he had been doing by not taking care of his parents. And so at that moment, next day, he brought Janudev and Satyavati and fell at their lotus feet. And he prayed that he will forever take care of them. He took them back from Varanasi and went back to where he was. And he served them so well that even Krishna came to hear of how Pundalik had changed and how he was serving his parents. And so one day Krishna decided to test that devotion. And so he came to the doorstep and there he stood and said, "Pundalik, I am here." Pundalik turned and saw, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's here. Pundalik was just about to finish, doing his service for his parents. And he said, "My Lord, I'm very happy you are here. You are the source of my strength. You are the source of who I am. Now let me just finish my duty to my parents. You should not stand on simple grass." He threw him a brick because he was very poor. And the brick was like a seat. In those days people would sit on the brick, right? Because it's elevated. Actually, it's better for your back than all these cushions. And so he told him, "Please stand there and wait for a while." And so the Lord thought, all right. He was very pleased. Krishna was not unpleased. Krishna is very pleased when his devotees perform their duties. He was very pleased when Arjuna decided to perform his duty. So he's very pleased that way. So he decided, let me stand and wait for my devotee to finish serving his parents. And so he stood this way, and he just stood there. Now he stood there for a long time. If you read the Shastras, this incident took place 28 yugas ago. And Krishna is still standing there. After 1 or 2 yugas, Rukmini Mata became a bit impatient. Where is Krishna? And she decided to come down. And when she came, she saw Krishna was standing there. And so when Pundalik saw that Rukmini Mata had come, he said, Mata, I'm very happy. You have both come. Now please give us your darshan while we serve our parents and do our duties. And he threw her brick also. And Rukmini Mata is standing. So the deities are standing today in Venkat Prabhu's house. But how apt is it that they are here? Because I have been coming to the house so many years. And when I see how Venkat Prabhu and Gita Mataji take care of their parents, right? How well they serve them, how loyally, how lovingly they are serving them. They are not young anymore. It's not easy. And as people grow old, they have their needs. They have their challenges. It is a fairy tale to think that when people get old, they'll just be flying around, being so nice, and you just want to fall at their feet. Those who have parents who are elderly will tell you, no, there are good days and there are not so good days. But despite all that, they have served them so well. And in fact, if I'm not wrong, I'm seeing Mother here. And it's really nice, Venkat Prabhu and Gita Mataji, for doing this. And I think that's why the Lord is firmly placed here. He's not going anywhere. Right? He moved from Mayor Road to East Coast Road. He's not going to move anywhere. And as long as we have devotees, who walk the talk, who actually perform devotional service, and who are actually very nice in their character, this is the pleasing nature of devotees. And we should strive for that actually. Right? So it's a beautiful story. And when Pundalik, saw that Krishna was there, eventually that area where Krishna stood became a great temple. And Pundalik today is adored as a great devotee of the Lord. Because by his change of consciousness, he attracted Vitthala and he attracted Rukmini. It's a very important point. And that's why Vitthala is also known as Vithoba. Right? Vithoba is another name for Vitthala. Abba in Marathi is father. And Vit is brick. So he is the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Father, who became very happy that someone is serving his father and his mother. You see? So Krishna is very kind in that way. And so keeping this in mind, let's chant Krishna's names, shall we? I was so happy to hear you all singing so loudly. Please continue to do that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Now hear you. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Jai Shri Hari Ram. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yajna ki. How many of us have heard of the story of Ajamil? We have heard, isn't it? You know, Ajamil is another example that I was thinking about today. He was a devotee when he was very young. He was a young boy, born into a Brahmana family. And because his parents worshipped Lord Vishnu, he also worshipped Lord Vishnu very nicely. And while he was worshipping the Lord, he was helping his father, getting firewood, doing nice sadhana, everything was good. And his devotional service was building up. One day, Ajamil, when he was about maybe 15 or 16, at that time he had just gotten married. In those days they got married early, you know, and he had a very nice, chaste Brahmana wife. And so he went to the forest to get something for his father, wood, I think. And Bhagavatam tells us when he entered the forest, as he was coming out, he witnessed a scene, you know, which he had never seen before. He saw a man and a woman embracing each other. And in those days, you know, it was not considered cultured for a man and a woman to show any affection outside, at least of this nature. Today, every MRT, every bus, you know, every tagline, it's so common we don't even think about, oh, how can this happen? It's just so common. But in Ajamil's time, it was just too much. So Ajamil just turned away and walked home. But the thing is, even though he walked, his mind stayed. You know, that's the challenge of the mind. We may all be present in Venkat Prabhu and Gita Mataji's house, but we don't know where our minds are present. That one nobody can know. Venkat Prabhu can tick off attendance, but he can't tick off the mental attendance. Are you here or are you somewhere else? You know, we don't know. We don't know. As we chant also, we're not sure where the mind is, right? And the problem with the mind is it tends to dwell. It likes to dwell in the place that you don't want it to sometimes. If I ask everyone now for just 1 minute, don't think of pink elephants. Absolutely don't think of it. It would have just popped up in your mind. It would. Your intelligence would tell you stop, stop. But the mind has already taken hold of the pink elephant. That's the nature of the mind, you see. And that's why you have, you know, in our sastras, there's a nice thing that states, a nice point. In sastras, there's a story of two, there were two disciples of a guru. And he had asked them to go and get some wood. So they were traveling. And as they were traveling, they got the wood and all, and they came to a river. And there they saw a young girl, and the young girl was seated, and she was crying. So one of them came up to her and said, "My dear sister, how can I help you? Why are you crying?" And she said, "My dear brother, I'm very sorry, but I crossed over to get something when the river was low. Now the tide is back, and I can't cross because I can't swim." So they were two brahmacharis. They're not supposed to have much to do with women. So the one who asked said, "Let me help you by carrying you, and I'll put you on the other side." And the other brother, right, the other brahmachari said, "You can't do that, it's against the rules, you can't do that." But this person said, "I have to help her." So I did it. So he brought her over and he put her on the other side. After that, as they went back to the hermitage to see Guru, all the way, the other person who did not carry her, he kept telling, "I'm going to tell Guru. I'm going to tell Guru, how can you carry her? Do you know you're not right to carry her? How could you do this? You'll be attracted to her, you'll be attached to her." And finally they reached the hermitage. And so their spiritual master asked them, "So how was your day?" And immediately the other brahmachari said, this is what he did. He carried her, he did this, he did that, and he's still carrying her. And it's not good. It's not good for our ashram. He went on and on and on. And at the end of it, the Guru kept quiet. And then he said one thing. He looked at the boy who carried the girl. And he said, you carried her from the start of the river and you dropped her at the end of the river. You picked her up at the end of the river, he turned to the other boy, and you have carried her right into our ashram. You have. Because while he did what he had to do and he walked away from it, you carried this girl in your mind. You continued with her, and you continued with her. So that's what happened to Ajamil. He went home, but his consciousness stayed with that lady. And in time, he kept meditating and meditating on her, and he became very attracted to her. That which you contemplate upon, you become attracted to. That's natural in this world. And so eventually, he abandoned his wife for this lady. And he stayed with her till he was 88 years old. He had many children with her. And he completely forgot Krishna consciousness. He forgot the life that he had. And he was completely immersed in material life. Towards the end, his youngest child, right, who was hardly a few years old, he named his youngest child Narayana. Now Bhagavatam tells us, he didn't name his child Narayana because he remembered Narayana. He did not. It's an important point, how Shastras say. He named the child Narayana because it was out of habit. He had some remembrance from his past, he remembered a name and he just gave the name. He did not mean it to be Krishna's name. And so at the point when death was going to come, as he lay on the bed, the Yamadutas came. You all have heard of the Yamadutas, isn't it? The Yamadutas are the servants and the messengers of Yamaraj. And I'm sure you must have heard of Yamaraj, right? If you have not heard of Yamaraj, in time you will hear of him. Everybody has an appointment with Yamaraj. It's not going to, you can't escape that. The only way you'll escape your appointment with Yamaraj is when you're going back to the spiritual world. Then Yamaraj will let you bypass. As long as you have to come back to this world, your appointment with Yamaraj is assured. So Yamaraj, right, was actually, he had sent his messengers. And the messengers came and they started taking the subtle body, not the main body, but the subtle body of Ajamil. And as they did that, Ajamil did one thing. Instinctively, from the stock of his previous devotional service, but not meaning it, he called out his son, because his son was playing. Narayana, Narayana. He just called him. He was not calling his son as Narayana. Neither did he name the child Narayana, thinking that one day, when I've forgotten Krishna all this time, I'll just, put a little bit of a deposit and just name someone God's name, so that at the end of my life it is stated that if you chant the name of God, you'll go back, right? So in that way I will go back. No, he didn't do that either. So his chanting of the name Narayana, according to Shastra, was offenseless. There was no offense to it. There was no ulterior motive to it. Sometimes when we come together to chant the Lord's names, we don't chant it for the pleasure, for His pleasure. We chant it because in our hearts we want something from Him. We want Him to help us with something. But a pure devotee will chant the names of the Lord regardless of whether he or she wants something. Ajamil, though he had completely forsaken Krishna, the moment of his chanting was very pure. And so at that moment, the Vishnu Dutas came. And when the Vishnu Dutas came, they stopped the Yamadutas and told them, you've got the wrong man. The Yamadutas looked at their file and said, this man's file is so thick, right, that Chitragupta had a hard time, getting all the dossier ready. He has done every single possible requirement that would attract us to him. He's done it all. So you can't say that we've got the wrong person. And then Vishnu Dutas looked at them and said, do you know who you are working for? In other words, who's your boss? And do you think your boss is the one who enacts all these laws in this material world? Do you not know that there is someone above Yamaraj? Do you not know the principles of religion? And the Yamadutas became a bit confused. How come they're talking philosophy? And how come they're asking us questions? We thought Yamaraj was the big boss, no one else. And so at that moment, right, the Vishnu Dutas stopped them and the Yamadutas left. Ajamil had the consciousness by Krishna's grace to hear this conversation. And as he heard it, his consciousness changed. He realized what a waste of his life. An entire life spent without chanting, singing, glorifying Krishna. What is the point of that life? The only end to that life is to meet Yamaraj. There's no other way then. So at that point of time, right, he came to his senses. He repented. He renounced all his proclivities and went to Badarik Ashram. And there he settled. And there he meditated on the Lord. And at the appropriate time, the same Vishnudutas who had come to save him, they came to take him back to the spiritual world. Now the point that's important here is, the Yamadutas, after they heard that, they went back to Yamaraj. And they looked at Yamaraj and they started asking him a very important question. We are befuddled by these Vishnudutas. How come Ajamil had the chance to be taken away? How was he saved? He shouldn't be saved. And Yamaraj is known as Mahajan. He's a great devotee of the Lord. And in several prayers, he then educates the Yamadutas. First, I am not supreme in this universe. Krishna is Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, Mattaha Sarvam Pravartate. He is the origin of all spiritual and all material worlds. He is Govindam Adi Purusham, not me. And only Krishna enacts the principles of religion. No one else enacts the principles of religion. You and I cannot come up with a concocted khichdi, I take this here, I take that here, and this becomes my new path. That is not the principle of religion. That's the way you want to live your life. And generally we do it so that we can accommodate whatever we want to do. We don't want to sacrifice. We want an easy life, right? Because when you take up spiritual life, you have to give up the things that are material and that you are used to. And that becomes very difficult for us. So then Yamaraj tells them one important thing. He says, for those who have even once chanted Krishna's names, or who take shelter of Krishna's names, we are never going to be able to touch them. They are simply out of our jurisdiction. It's a very legal term he uses in Bhagavatam, right? Yamaraj is saying, you got it wrong. These people who chant Krishna's names, they are outside my jurisdiction. Therefore, they are outside your jurisdiction. Therefore, we cannot come and take them. You know what is the implication of that? The implication is, for at least this 1 hour, Yamaraj is not going to touch us. Because we are outside his jurisdiction. We are in Venkat Prabhu's jurisdiction. Right? And because he is a devotee and Vitthala is here, we are not going to be touched. And then he says something very important. Jivana bhakti bhagavat gunanamadheyam. Jiva means the tongue, right? Then he says, Chetaschana smarati taccharanarvindam. Chetas means the heart. Then he says, Krishna smarati yachira ekadapi. Then he ends by saying, Tan anayadhyam asato krita vishnu krityan. Now this is a very important verse we want to end with today. Because Yamaraj tells them, bring me only 4 kinds of persons. And he makes it very clear, only 4 kinds of persons. The first kind, he says, bring me those who do not use their tongue to chant my names. That's why I'm watching everyone. As you hear the holy name, move your tongue. Because in Bhagavatam, the tongue is the source, right, and the seat of all sinful activities. In case you're wondering what is sin, sin in Shastras is defined very simply. Sin simply means forgetfulness of Krishna. That is all. Every time you are in remembrance of the Lord, there is no sin. Every time you forget Him and perform something, it is sin. Sin is simply forgetfulness of the Lord because it implicates you in this material world, right? We are all here today, but there is no karma affecting us at this moment. And even up to Prasadam, there is no karma. Because this gathering is transcendental. It has no effect. So whatever happens here will be spiritual. You feel it. You can feel the atmosphere. It's very different. So bring those who even once do not use their tongue to chant the name of Krishna. Second point he brings up. Bring me those whose hearts do not even once remember Smarati. Don't even once remember Tat Charanarvindam, the lotus feet of Krishna. He's not saying that we should use our mind to remember Krishna. Because mind is material and mental, but the heart is the seat of the soul and the super soul. So he's saying, use your heart to remember Krishna. Very often we say we need memory to remember something, but Bhagavatam is very different. Bhagavatam says, use your heart to remember the Lord. Then you will remember him well. And the third point he says, bring me those whose heads not even once bow down before Krishna. That's why we have to bow before the Lord. Sometimes it's become so commonplace for us that if we have our deities at home, right, every morning we see them, we may just put our hands together, but we don't bow. But actually we should not take it for granted. They are not puppets or dolls. They are Krishna. Therefore we must bow before them. Sometimes we forget to do that and we say, well, it's okay, I'm bowing in my heart. But when we have the capacity to bow, why don't we bow? It is stated that if you don't bow voluntarily before Krishna, by the arrangement of material nature, you'll be forced to bow before Krishna. Right? You'll be forced to bow before Krishna. And it is also stated, your progress in spiritual life is just 3 feet away. And what is the 3 feet? 3 feet is just that moment you bow down before Krishna, you just drop by 3 feet. That is the difference between an advancing devotee and a devotee who thinks he has arrived. So bowing is very important. And the last thing he says, bring me the category of persons who asato akritya Vishnu kritya. Bring me those who never want to perform any service to Vishnu. How much service Venkat Prabhu, Gita Mataji are doing today for us. Because of their generosity and devotion, we are gathered here to hear about Krishna. That is service. And don't forget, just by you kindly coming for the program, you are also performing the greatest service. By coming, by spending time with Krishna, this pleases Krishna. So Yamaraj says so nicely in just one shloka, these are the 4 things that we should avoid. If we want to advance in our devotional service, then avoid these 4 things. Because these 4 things will definitely attract Yamadutas and they attract Yamaraj. So Ajamil is a story which gives us great hope. Because even though Ajamil was nearly gone, forgotten about Krishna, somehow or another, by Krishna's grace, he remembered to give his son's name as Narayana. And even if you call out Krishna's name without meaning, right, saying Krishna, I actually mean it, Krishna is so kind, he accepts it. He accepts it anyway. That's the kindness of him. We may not, we may think, oh, you called my name but you didn't mean it. You've met, right? Sometimes people say, oh, you called me but you didn't mean it. Krishna is not like that. Krishna is saying that it doesn't matter whether you mean it, you don't mean it, I will accept it. Who can be more forgiving? Who can be more merciful than Krishna? Putana pretended to be a Datri, nurse, and she came to feed Krishna with poison. But Krishna ignored her faults and glorified her motherhood just because she pretended. So even if you come here and pretend to be a devotee, something which I know you're not, but even if we are pretending to be, even then Krishna gives us concession. How much more will he give if we even try to be devotees? Just try. So some change is required. If you love someone, you must change something for them. You cannot say, oh Krishna, I love you, but I'll just go on with my life. At some point I'll see you again. Haribol. That's not love, right? Love has to have sacrifice. There must be something that must change. And that's what we're asking. Do something. And another very important thing the Shastras say is the importance of naming your children with the names of God. How important it is. In this day and age, you have Dimple, Twinkle, and I don't know, all kinds of funny names, they're all in vogue, isn't it? If you give a nice, simple name, like Venkatesh or Venkat, today people will say, oh, that's all outdated. But that is a lifesaver. It's a lifesaver. So please remember that. If you're going to name someone, please remember that. So are we ready to sing one more time? And do you think this time you should be dancing?
Yes. All the water guys come here. Come behind.
I knew Venkat Prabhu will. This is a setup, by the way. Yeah, me and Venkat planned it. So let's do that. Let's dance for the pleasure of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Jai Devakinandan Vitthala ki.
Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Bol,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Bol,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
यज्ञ की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय श्री श्री पांडुरंग विठ्ठला की श्री श्री राधा मदन मोहन जी की श्री श्री राधा गोविंद जी की श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ जी की श्री श्री राधा नीलमाधव जी की श्री श्री रुक्मिणी द्वारकाधीश की अनंत गौरी वैष्णववृंद की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। Thank you, Venkat Prabhu, Gita Mataji. And Gita Mataji, wishing you a very, very Krishna conscious appearance day. Wishing you also that your consciousness in remembering Krishna will continue always. And thank you for being such an exemplary devotee. And thank you for always inviting us so many times to your house and giving us such opportunities to speak about Krishna. Thank you very much. And Venkat Prabhu, as always, thank you to you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for coming together. I wish you all the best in your spiritual life. Jai Lakshmi Narayan Bhagwan ki. Jai. Hare Hare.